Hello and welcome to our subject, human rights and social work. We shall start off with an introduction on human rights, which is easier said than done. Most people think they know what human rights are, but ask them to define the term and they struggle to do so. The key word, of course, the key words here are human and rights. Simple enough, but historically, I find that not everyone that we now recognize as human has been accepted as such. We have had kings and noblemen having status that elevates them above normal men and women or commoners. Men are, in some cases, given higher status than women or children. Free men and women elevated over slaves and occupied or colonized people, white men and women over black men and women, wealthy land owners over poor landless, and so on. So when we have unequal people, you have unequal rights and entitlements. So it's only as recent as 1948, with the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, that the concept of rights as belonging to all people, irrespective of race, gender, nationality, and so on, have been widely contemplated. Of course, this was a result of hundreds, if not thousands of years of trying to work out how we need to treat each other. The struggle continues to this day, though each generation may decide what issue is most important to it. Marriage equality, for example, has been an issue that has interested Australians, especially young Australians. They see it as an unfinished business in this human rights struggle. So, how do we define human rights then? Human rights are the basic freedoms and protection that people are entitled to simply because they are human beings. But as we shall see, it is a bit more complex than that when you get into the details. We shall try to highlight some of the complexities and contradictions that are behind the notion of human rights. Human rights are very important to social work and social welfare workers, and we shall be exploring the role of social workers in terms of promoting and protecting human rights. At this point, I also suggest you read Ives' book, Chapter 1, and Module 1 or Topic 1 in your modules. Where do rights come from? Rights are simply constructed through human interaction and dialogue. They are indeed an expression of what we think should be the basic standard of a decent society. They also spring from the notion that we have a shared humanity, and without accepting that we have a shared humanity, it's impossible to think about human rights for everyone. Because they are socially constructed, they will also vary over time and also varied in different cultures and political contexts. So, what are some of the key disagreements that have been there since the definition of human rights by the United Nations in 1948? Now, the non-Western countries have been suspicious that human rights are a tool for the West to control them and impose their cultural values. In other words, practice cultural imperialism. But the West too has been concerned that some rights issues, such as workers' rights, are there to weaken the West. The West also favors individual rights, while the non-Western world has tended to push for more collective rights as the more important rights. So the question then, can we have universal rights in a diverse world? If so, who defines them? Who protects them? And who guarantees those rights? You can see from this discussion that universal human rights are still a very recent concept, and we are far from realizing them for everyone. The notion of special rights has also been contested. Should vulnerable groups, such as children or women, have special rights? This springs from the fact that vulnerable groups need the special rights in order to realize the same rights as other humans, and as such, there is no contradiction. Children, for example, need special rights to protect them from predatory adults, and giving them special rights is not any contradiction to the concept of universal rights. The role of the United Nations has been critical in helping to define and promote human rights, and they are presented by the United Nations as universal, indivisible, inalienable, that is to say, they can't be taken away, and inabrogable, which means that you can't also freely give away your rights. Social workers and social welfare workers are committed to human rights and social justice. Social justice is related to human rights, but it is less legalistically defined and focuses more on practical ways of achieving equality and fairness for all. Karel Vasak analyzed the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and Covenants back in the 1970s, around 1977, and concluded that human rights could be grouped into three categories that he called generations. The first generation refers to the legal rights that guarantee individual freedoms. The second generation are economic and cultural rights that guarantee basic needs such as food, clothing, and shelter. The third generation are the collective rights that guarantee a world that is worth living for all. Thank you, and that's why we shall leave this introduction.